Yes, yes. Welcome to the ancient world of tabletop games. I am Agamemnon from the historical documentary Time Bandits. This is a report from a fugitive. How do you play board games online? I set this channel up so that eventually I'd run board games for contributors in other parts of the world. As I record this video in the never-to-be-forgotten excuse for a year that is 2020, the ability to run games for those in other locations takes on a different dimension. If you once played board games in the kitchen with people who drove to your house, how many of your board games can you now convert to online play during quarantine? Here I don't concern myself with electronic versions of those games. I'm talking about controlling a game board from one location, this table, and exporting the experience to online participants through a webcam. Point a camera at the board and away you go. Dexterity games are out. It's best to play games with open information in them. If you must play games with hidden information, I recommend hidden movement games in which the player running the table is the villain. The usual suspects, you know the drill. Whitechapel, Whitehall, and Fury of Dracula, for example. Online board gaming with a webcam works best in cooperative games that rely on open information. Everyone has a hand of cards, but everyone is allowed to see all of the cards. No hidden hands here. It's possible to hide information online, but it's fiddly. This video doesn't get tangled up in that. Instead, I remembered threatening to make a video about dice mapping. The time has come. In an online game, how do you handle rolling the dice? You roll them. The end. Thanks for watching, but wait a bit. Suppose the game uses custom dice. Instead of 6-sided dice numbered 1 to 6, you have 6-sided dice with pictures on them, small explosions or shock horror, blank faces. Custom dice add theme and a sense of drama as the cubes come to a halt. You no longer look for numbers. Instead, you chase after thematic results. Samurai ride to the rescue, or clues appear and help solve the mystery. Games don't need these gimmicks. Once they appeared on dice, though, gamers wanted those gimmicks. How to handle the use of custom dice? There are 3 options. 1. Everyone playing has a copy of the game at home and can access the custom dice. Problem solved. There's a variation on this. I vowed that my contributors, no matter where they were in the world, wouldn't be out of pocket just from turning up to play a game. People were invited along, but no one was asked to spend money on equipment. My first wave of contributors, I've arranged items for those gamers, folding trays so their dice don't roll all over the floor during video production. A few specialized dice, 3-siders, for games that use those. The variation on everyone having the game at home is for the video producer to buy a duplicate copy of a game for a contributor. There's a budget and one eye on a cheap deal, and a gasp at the postage involved, which is why I'll arrange for a game in-country if I can. Options 1, 2, and 3 are all options I've tried. As most of you aren't running board game channels, you're excused the variation of running around like a loon buying game copies for the squad. Less expensive is option 2. The player running the game drops the custom dice down a tower or into a dice tray, rolling the results in front of all participants, and does this for every player. I'm of the view that it doesn't really matter who rolls the dice, unless I roll the dice, in which case the results will be the worst in the history of space-time itself, bearing in mind the exception that this view is revised with each new disastrous roll. Until I took up dice rolling, the world's worst case of dicery was inflicted by Caligula on a nervous-looking crowd of gamblers who waged their lives against possession of the all-new Roman Empire on the throw of a few shady 6-siders. Caligula remained in charge. The crowd served as tasty bites for the lions down on the arena floor. And that is a dice-rolling fact. In running test games backstage with the Canadian Karen Woodward, I offered her option 3 for dealing with custom dice, and that's dice mapping. She had an electronic random number generator on standby for her rolls, but when she saw the effect of this sanity die as it fell from the dice tower, she felt the buzz of anticipation that goes along with foolishly spending money in a one-armed bandit. Will the slot machine deliver 3 kings, or a losing raspberry combination? And so, for most of the game, she accepted my operation of the dice tower on her turn for her die roll. Some players cling to the notion that they are in control of their destinies if they're allowed to roll the dice themselves. That's quaint, and by quaint I mean deluded. We are slave to fate, chance, kings, desperate men, and dice. Shout out to John Dunn for the quote. He's a big Yahtzee fan. But now I'm reminded of the Yahtzee incident and must impose a cordon sanitaire around the anecdote, lest it escape unbidden into the wild. Does it matter who rolls the cubes? In gaming online, we're here to watch the faces the dice land on, and not the hands that roll them. If you give up the act of rolling your dice, you gain the community spirit that goes with rolling those dice on behalf of all players. This generates a bit of theatre, as the international gaming crowd cheers or boos by turn. Occasionally there's an exclamation of sheer disbelief, coupled with gales of laughter. Pop those bones into a dice tower and let roll on behalf of all players. It works well, better than you'd imagine. The point of this video is to discuss option 3, dice mapping. Take a 6-sided custom die, note the results, and draw up a chart mapping those results to numbers. Yes, this will work for 10-siders and any other dice you find out there, but we'll stick with 6-siders for the purposes of this talk. First, what are the potential results when rolling a 6-sided die? There are at least 8 possible options here. First, you could roll 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Next, you could roll the same but not flat. From backgammon, dice that land unevenly are cocked dice and must be re-rolled. The 8th option is that the 6-sider rolls off the table and vanishes, ne'er to be seen again. Roll 1 to 6, flat. Or roll a cocked die, the number is irrelevant, fail to roll legally, and be forced to re-roll, and in the worst case, be forced to reach for a replacement when your original die vanishes. Let's say you don't cock it up. I'm overlooking the obvious move of throwing a 6-sider into someone's eye, provoking a counterattack. It's not likely to occur. Very often. You are rolling results from 1 to 6. Now map them out. Draw a diagram of the die faces connected, but lying flat, unfolded. Depending on the handedness of the die, you'll see this image to the left or to the right. When you stare at a 6-sided die at an angle, it lets you read 3 faces at once. Read the numbers in order from lowest to highest. If the numbers run clockwise, the die is left-handed, and if the numbers run anti-clockwise, the die is right-handed. In my collection, dice with numbers are left-handed. The dice with pips are right-handed. This isn't going to affect your dice mapping. Try to be consistent. Now you have a diagram to work with. Grab your custom die and stare at that. Write out the icons in place of the numbers and then create a 1 to 6 chart. Email a copy of that chart to distant players. They don't have the dice, but they do want to roll dice. So they roll 1 to 6, consult the chart, and come up with an iconic result. Consistency is important. If loads of custom dice are included in a game, check the ones that look the same just to be sure that they are the same. Dice mapping is far from perfect. Ideally, everyone should have custom dice. If players don't like the idea of the table player rolling dice inside a dice tower or across a dice tray, then dice mapping is the way to go. When I invited Karen Woodward to play Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu, I sent her copies of player reference cards. I also reworked the sanity die results into a chart, copying and pasting bits of the rules until I had a new display for her to work from, using her own 6-sider. Not that she used one, she opted for a digital random number generator, until she saw how the Canadian Dice Tower worked and just let me use that on her behalf. This tower is by Black Thumb Creations. I laughed at the description stating you could build one of these in 30 minutes. Yes, if you want matchwood. I worked up a similar chart for the dice in Pandemic Fall of Rome, but we were used to the steampunk dice tower by then. Always create a dice map in advance, in case your players don't want to relinquish control to a central location, as if there's such a thing as control when rolling dice. There is, but casinos frown on that sort of thing. And that's a kneecapping fact.